Alright, so today we're going to be reading Belize Constitution, just a little bit of it. We're not going to read the entire thing because it's comprised of 177 pages. But as we can see here, it's arranged in sections and parts. First part, it involves going into the details of, well, not details, but basically just outlining what the state is, and the Constitution is supreme law. Part 2 talks about the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. So this is the first thing, right after saying it's the supreme law. So these rights and freedoms, these are what you call properties. Rights are properties. You can buy property, you can buy a right, you can sell rights. So freedoms, that's also a property. You have the freedom to go into agreements, make decisions, make choices. So these are properties. So this is the protection of fundamental properties. So who owns your rights? Who owns your freedoms? Well, that's yours. And each one of us individually grant these rights and freedoms to the state, being a body that is being given delegation of sovereign rights and freedoms. So now the state becomes a sovereign state, a sovereign body, a sovereign nation. That is because the people are in agreement in this constitution right here that these are going to be protected. So this goes into fundamental rights and freedoms, protection of right of life, protection of a right of personal liberty. Now this talks more about, when you hear personal liberty, it's talking about the persona, the person we choose to identify yourself as in public commerce or in the public realm, public domain. It's a personality, right? So you could say you're a person as a businessman, you're a person as self-employed, or you're a person as a private individual. Your person is that you have a liberty. So these persons have liberties as well within the Constitution. The protection of law, right? Protection of inhumane treatment, protection from slavery and forced labor, protection from arbitrary search or entry, protection from protection of freedom of movement, protection of freedom of conscience, protection of freedom of expression, protection of freedom of assembly and association, protection of right to privacy, protection of right to work, protection from discrimination on the grounds of race, etc., protection from the deprivation of property. And you see, it's a lot of protection of these different properties, which we as living men and women have a right to either transfer, give power of attorney over. We can enter into agreements where we waive those rights, right? But this protection right here is basically within the agreement with the state for them to protect it. Who's them? The body of trustees. We're entrusting them with these properties so that it can be protected. So this is a trust agreement. And it says here, provisions for a period of public emergency, protection of persons detained under emergency laws, enforcement of protective provisions, protection of existing laws, interpretation and savings. Then it goes into citizenship. Well, keep in mind, right, that the people of the land, being under the laws of their creator, has decided to enter into an agreement with a body called a state. And the state has a name called Belize. So Belize, being a territory or a legal person, because it's a sovereign body, it creates these citizens and gives them citizenship. And this is what, if you notice, in order to be a public trustee, you must have citizenship, right? Because you must be of the Belize body of trustees or members, right? Members too of Belize. So persons born in Belize or on or after Independence Day. Now, this word person, it might imply man and woman, but it doesn't necessarily limit it to just man and woman. In fact, it's more specific to legal persons or entities which is created within the state of Belize, meaning that they make a certificate of a person called Shell gas station. That's a person. It has rights. It's a person of Belize if it's a Belizean. All companies registered under Belize are persons. All partnerships, all foundations, organizations, these things, when are registered, they become personalities of Belize. These are persons. So let's keep that in mind, that that's what it also means. Persons born in Belize are citizens. So let's say Belize Bank is a citizen of Belize because it's a person of Belize. BEL, Belize Electricity Limited, is a person of Belize. So let's keep that in mind as well. Persons born outside of Belize on or after Independence Day. Talks about registration, dual nationality, citizenship legislation. See, meaning laws for the citizens, right? So I want to ask you something. If they make laws for these persons, like companies, corporations, and those laws for them, is it your laws as man and woman? Well, it would be if you would consent to be in the same level as an artificial entity, right? But citizenship of Belize, meaning that these are persons that are under Belize authority because they were registered and created by Belize. They were given a name legally, and now Belize controls that entity. That entity can get citizenship somewhere else as well, but we're talking about the man and woman is what represents these, or we speak for them. So I just wanted to clear that up too, to keep that in mind. These citizenship legislations, they're not necessarily for private men and women who simply operate as outside the jurisdiction of citizenship or legal entities. So interpretation then goes into part 4, which is the Governor General, establishment of office, acting Governor General, and oaths to be taken by the Governor General. Talks about the Deputy Governor General, the exercise of Governor General's function, Governor Generals to be informed concerning matters of government. Then it goes into part 5, which is the executive. Now, the executive, you could also consider the word executor, executors of estates. So, did you know that properties, these properties right here of men and women, are part of their estates? All properties, if you have a property, well, you can name that as part of your estates. In fact, if land is abandoned and the government takes it over because no one's using it, it holds it in trust just in case somebody comes and claims it. Maybe an heir claims it, or somebody will claim it as part of their estate. So when we hand over these freedoms and rights, which are properties, to the government as trustees, these are the executors, the executive authority, which are the prime ministers, deputy prime ministers, performance of functions of prime ministers during absence or illness, minister of governments, ministers. See, they're all religious things right here, but allocation of portfolios of ministers, attorney general, performance of functions of ministers during absence or illness. Talks about the cabinet, goes into ministers of state, oaths to be taken by ministers, etc. See, these ministers, they are required to take an oath, and they are If they don't comply by this oath, then they can't be ministers. Leaders of the opposition, chief executive officer, secretary of the cabinet, control of public prosecutions, of public persons under citizenship, constitution of offices, etc. Prerogative of mercy, procedure in capital cases, Belize Advisory Council. Part 6 goes into the legislator, which are the laws. These laws are for the persons of Belize, under the laws of Belize, right? So this is what you call the administrative laws. These are all what you call bills, right? They pass these bills. Bills just sound exactly what they sound like. Debt, they're just liabilities, which then they pass down to the citizens, and then the people of the land, they take the role as surety and are mandated and forced to pay for that debt. So anyway, this is establishment of legislators, House of Representatives, compositions of House of Representatives, qualifications for election as members, disqualification for election as members, tenure of office of members, procedure when a member vacates seat due to a resignation or crossing the floor, speaker and deputy speaker. Then there's the Senate, composition of Senate, powers and functions of the Senate, qualifications for appointment as Senate, disqualifications for appointment as senator, tenure of office of senator, appointment of temporary senators, president and vice president, clerk of houses and National Assembly. So here is power to make laws, alteration of constitution, regulation of procedure in National Assembly, oath to be taken by members of National Assembly, presiding in House of Representatives and Senate, voting, freedom of speech, validity of proceedings, quorum, and introductions of bills. See, they're bills. It's orders to pay. There's liabilities because there's no money in the public. It's all debt. They're going to create money, manufacture money by bills. Because once they pass a bill and they put it out in the public, now they start giving people tickets so that people can then take it out of their labor to cover those bills, those liabilities. So they're passing the bill on to the people, and the people pay those bills. Just like an electric bill or car bill, it's just bills. So that's why they create charges on people to pay those bills. So this is what they do, pass bills. Provisions relating to section 77, 78, and 79, mode of exercise of legislative power, words of enactment, secession of legislator, etc. Prerogative and dissolution of legislator, general elections, by-elections, and appointment of senators, determination of questions as to the membership of National Assembly, unqualified persons sitting or voting, election boundaries commission, electoral division, increase of electoral division, redivision of electoral divisions, conduct of voting, and conduct of elections. See, this is just the breakdown of how, and the structure of this body of, how can I say, it's like a corporate body. And this is the outline of how that corporation or body of trustees are going to handle its affairs under the trust with the people. Then it goes into the judiciary, because see, those trustees, there are many trustees and many members, and basically this is the judiciary that is supposed to implement or enforce these laws and make sure that the trustees are in check and in order, right? They're following the trust agreement, which is the Constitution or private agreement. So this is the magistracy, establishment of Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, referral of certain questions to the Supreme Court and Caribbean Court of Justice, appointment of justices to Supreme Court, tenure of office to justices of Supreme Court, oaths of office by justices of Supreme Court, appeals. Now, if you notice, all these offices require an oath. This is because in order to receive the power that that office holds, you must give something in exchange, which is a promise that you will be subject to the trust agreement, that you will perform the duties and obligations within the trust agreement. Right? Anything outside of that is not as per the oath, and you have to have an oath in order to get that position. So appeals to the Court of Appeal, appointment of justices of appeal, tenure of office of justices of appeal, oath to be taken by justices of appeal. See, oaths again. Appeals to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Part what is this? 5, 6, 7, 5, 8. Okay, so subpart 1, the Public Service Commission, talks about Public Services Commission, appointment, etc., of public officers. Appointment of public officers. Appointment, etc., of chief executive officers and certain other officers, right, holding office. Right, they need to have oaths for these. These are public offices of public trust, as public trustees, directors of public prosecutions. See, prosecution of public, it's supposed to be the officers. These prosecutions are supposed to be only against officers in these courts, but we'll get into that later. Auditor General, this one is repealed, this one is repealed. Appointment, etc., of junior officers of prison service. Then it goes into subpart 2, Security Service Commission, okay. The appointment of officers, police officers, members of the Belize Defense Force, etc. And subpart 3, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, appointment of judicial and legal officers, etc. Power to extend, to give decision and a reason for decision. And we go into subpart 9, and that is the appeals in discipline cases. Then subpart, actually this is supposed to be 9, not subpart 9, subpart 4, sorry, and subpart 5 right here, pension laws and pension rights of public officers, pension laws and protection of pension rights, grant and withholding of pensions. And it goes into part 9, which is finance, money, establishment of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. This is a public fund right here, see? Consolidated Revenue Fund, public fund of revenue. Authorization of expenditure from that Consolidated Revenue Fund, authorization of expenditure in advance of appropriation, contingencies funds. See, these big ass words right here, most people don't understand what the hell those mean. That's why people don't like reading these things right here. But it's it's done that purposely, because too it requires study enough for you to understand this, and so it's understandable. They want you to study, want you to learn these things here. Remuneration remuneration of certain officers. That's why I need to study. I gotta continue reading, because these words right here still trip me out sometimes. Remuneration of certain officers, public debt, audit of public accounts, etc. Part 10, miscellaneous code of conduct, national symbols, powers of appointment and acting appointments, reappointments and concurrent appointments, removal from office, resignation, saving for jurisdiction of courts, power to amend and revoke instruments, etc., consultation, national seal, interpretation. Then we go to part 11, transitional provisions, interpretation of this part, the Constitution, transitional powers, existing laws, first Governor General, ministers, National Assembly, existing public officers, Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, alteration of this part. Then we go into part 12, repeal and date of commencement. Commencement, revocations. Part 13, government control over public utilities. Goes into interpretation, talks about major ownership and control of public utilities, talks about the validity of acquisition orders in respect of Belize Electricity Limited and Belize Telemedia Limited. Schedule 1, definition of Belize. Schedule 2, alteration of constitution. Schedule 3, forms of oaths and forms of affirmation. Schedule 4, revocation. And it commences. So took me about 20 minutes just to read that, just the parts. So I'm gonna end it here. I'm gonna do a new video and start right here, man. So peace and love.